Hey y'all, Winchester here with another possum paw prints. Today I'm going to be going over some furry terms. Basically, whether you are just discovering the furry fandom, just starting out, or have been with the furries for a long time, there are some terms that you're going to hear. So first I'm going to go over some that you should hear outside the fandom, and then we'll go over some that you'll hear as you're starting out in the fandom, and then we'll even cover some that as you get more in depth in the fandom, you might start hearing more and more. First is commission and quote. First of all, the two are not the same, okay? A commission is when you hire somebody, an artist, to make you either a suit or a piece of artwork. And you actually give that person money, and they in turn give you suit or artwork. That is commissioning. A quote, on the other hand, is not a guaranteed commission. Basically, you go to the suit maker and you say, hey, I have this concept for a suit. What would you charge me? And that suit maker is going to say, okay, well, this, and this. I will charge you this much. And that is your quote. That is how much they are asking you to pay. A quote is not a base price. A base price for a full digigrade suit could be $2,100. Just throwing that out there. But after you show your character to the maker, they could be like, well, we're going to have to add some here because you have a lot of colors, and you have a very complex design, and you have all these extra appendages such as wings or 2 tails or 4 ears. So your quote is $3,000. Generally, that will include shipping as well. So when you ask for a quote from a maker, make sure you give them your postal code and whether or not you are in the country of that maker. So if your maker's in the United States and you're in Australia, make sure you let them know that, because that's going to up your quote. Shipping is very expensive, especially when you're talking about full digigrade suits. Now, outside the furry fandom, a quote can be used for just about anything else. So if your furnace breaks down and you need the handyman to come out and tell you how much it's going to cost because it needs this part and this much labor and that and that and that, that's a quote. If you want new drapes and you want them custom made, you're going to go to a seamstress or a store that sells drapes, and you're going to say, I want this color and this length with this design and this kind of loops on the top, and they're going to hand you a piece of paper and they're going to say, this is how much we're going to charge. That's a quote. Another word that you should be hearing outside the furry fandom, but definitely applies here too, is a plushie or a stuffy. Now, some people like to refer to furries as plushies. This is not correct. Furries are not plushies. Plushies are cute little stuffed animals that you see everywhere. This is my Stitch plushie, and I have a lot of Stitch plushies. I like Stitch. Okay? So, also known as a stuffy. A con, or a convention. Now, there are tons and 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 oh my, there are so many different types of cons, or conventions. Cons for short. There are furry cons. There are Star Trek cons. There are Star Wars cons. There are comic cons. There are, I don't even know. There are so many different types of cons. I have been lucky enough to attend not just fur cons, but other types as well, including small cons, like kind of like neighborhood cons, where you only get maybe 100 people the entire weekend, all the way up to MFF, Midwest Fur Fest, which gets about, well, this last year was 10,000, but I wasn't there for that one. But when I was at, I think it was about 7,500 people the whole weekend. So I've experienced both ends of the spectrum. Feral is another term you're going to hear a lot in the furry fandom. But you should also hear that outside of the furry fandom. Feral is basically just an animal. Well, feral means wild outside of the furry fandom. So like a feral cat that's outside your door is a wild cat. I don't recommend picking them up. But feral inside the furry fandom has a slightly different meaning. It basically means a four-legged animal. So you could have a character like Alkali, and I have a feral version, and I have an anthro version. Anthro, or anthropomorphic, means an animal that exhibits human characteristics. It's that simple. An animal that exhibits human characteristics. I.e., a wolf standing on its hind legs and talking. Okay, that's anthropomorphic. It's a very long, fancy word for saying human-like animal. Fursona and character. Those are two terms you're going to hear a lot in the furry fandom. A character is basically just that. It's something that you made, that you designed, that you chose. Okay? Sometimes you can buy characters. They're called character auctions. But a lot of the times people prefer to make a character because it gives it more meaning. You choose the species, you choose the colors, you choose the designs. Of course, if you buy one at auction, usually all that is decided for you. And that's fine too. That's perfectly okay. A fursona, on the other hand, is a character that has more meaning. So Winchester here is a fursona. He is my fursona. He is one of my fursonas. He is not my main fursona. That would be Alkali. But he does have a lot of meaning to me. Not just the character itself, but his personality, his backstory, everything about Winchester is part of me. That's a fursona. Fur meet. You know what a fur con is? It's usually a 3-day event that's held in a bigger city, and there's tons of them across the world. A fur meet, on the other hand, is usually only a couple hours long, is held in a smaller town, and is usually only for the locals. That's not saying that if you're not local you can't attend. Just that usually only locals attend because that's where they go and they see their friends, or occasionally there'll be a mini artist alley, so they go to sell their stuff. A lot of times they're held at bowling alleys, so they go to hang out and have fun with other furries. So that's a fur meet. Fursuit. Now I'm sure, even if you're just getting started in the furry fandom, you have heard of or seen fursuits. You're looking at one right now. Albeit a partial, but it's still a fursuit. A fursuit is just that. It's a costume based on a character that somebody wears and is usually only for one person. Occasionally, you might share a fursuit with somebody if they're really close to you and you both bond with that character. Now there are many different types of fursuits, and we'll go over them more in depth in another episode. But, for the sake of this one, I'll go over them really quickly. There's partials. There's mini, half, 3/4, and full partials. There's a full suit. There's plantigrade suit. There's digigrade or digitigrade suit. And then, within that, there are toony, semi-toony or semi-realistic, and realistic. And those should be pretty self-explanatory. Toony, well, it's a cartoon-looking suit, or a character. Doesn't have to be a suit to be toony or realistic. Semi-toony or semi-realistic are often interchangeable, but you can kind of lean more way with one or the other. So just that. So it might have toony aspects, but look kind of realistic at the same time, such as the coloring, the style, the attitude, and so forth. And then fully realistic. These are suits or characters that have absolutely no toony parts to them at all. So everything is realistic to them. So their eyes are realistic, the shape of them is realistic, maybe even the body portions are realistic. It really depends on how you want to portray it. Now Winchester is semi-toony, meaning he's mostly toony, but his paws are realistic. As you can see, he's got the silicone paw pads, which make it more realistic looking. Harder to grab stuff, but more realistic.